Every once in a while, conditions in a given geographic area come together in such a way that the environment is creatively perfect. The right musicians with the right attitudes, the right venues with the right fans, the business infrastructures are in place. The mood and the fashion and the street slang and the vibe and the drugs are all correct. And then the media comes on board and it all blows up. If all this happens in exactly the right order, in exactly the correct amounts, and at exactly the right time, you have the makings of a scene. And once a vibrant scene has been identified, it feeds upon its own energy until the whole thing burns up and collapses under its own weight of excess. Now, we've seen this kind of thing again and again. Seattle in grunge, New York in punk, London in Britpop. And one of the great scenes of the alternative era coalesced in a gritty industrial city in the northwest of England. There are those who say that there wasn't a scene at all. It was just a fabrication of the music press in far-off London who were starved for something to write about. Well, maybe so, but the myths and legends and hype grew nonetheless. And all of it would have been blown off as just, smoke and hyperbole had the music not been so good. Or maybe it was the drugs. Could have been the drugs. Or maybe it was a little bit of both. After all, there was a reason they called this scene in Manchester Madchester.
Now, the ongoing history of new music.
with The Only One I Know from their Some Friendly debut album, 1990. Welcome again. I'm Alan Cross, and for this show, we're going to go back to the late 1980s and early 1990s to study a period that is not only still fondly remembered, but remains very influential when it comes to various flavors of alternative-tinged pop. They called it Madchester, a swirly, psychedelic sound with cool grooves. It was guitar rock for dance fans, and dance music for people who like guitars. It came with its own fashion, its own haircuts, and its own drugs. And ground zero for this whole thing was the city of Manchester, an old industrial city in the north of England. Despite appearances, and for a variety of reasons, Manchester has always been something of a rock and roll capital. Much of it has to do with World War II, when a lot of American troops were billeted in the city. They brought with them the American Forces Radio Network, which gave the city their first taste of R&B and jazz and bebop. And by the late 1950s, this new thing was called rock and roll. This was a big deal in a country where all the radio was controlled by the government, and the tight-ass BBC wasn't really interested in rock and roll and other heathen music. Through the 1960s, the British mod movement found roots in Manchester. There was the whole thing with the Beatles and Liverpool to the west. And then came a club and coffeehouse scene featuring some of the first discos, and one of the world's first celebrity DJs, a guy by the name of Jimmy Savile. Manchester was also an important cog in the wheel when it came to the British punk explosion. The Sex Pistols show at the Manchester Free Trade Hall on June 4th, 1976 has gone down a myth and legend, even though fewer than 4 dozen people were there. If you've seen the excellent movie 24-Hour Party People, you know what I mean. Over the next few years, Manchester gave us the Buzzcocks, Mark E. Smith and the Fall, Joy Division, New Order, James. And that's a lot of really good music.
Live transmission.
Joy Division, one of the great bands to come out of Manchester in the late 1970s. Much of the city's punk and post-punk music was like that, dark and brooding and nihilistic and negative. It was a reflection of the mood of the city. The old smoky factories were crumbling, youth unemployment was really high, and there were a couple of summers that were really, really hot. The city's century-old sewer system was crumbling, and there were weeks where a smell just kind of hung in the streets. But not everything was written in a minor key. The Smiths were all about jangly pop, and between 1982 and their breakup in 1987, they not only became one of the biggest bands in Manchester, but one of the most influential British indie bands ever. If you're into the retro of the era, you'll know the song This Charming Man from the Smiths' 1982 self-titled debut record. The song was later released in 6 new forms, much against the wishes of the band, who then later successfully demanded that all these unauthorized mixes be withdrawn. And that means you may not have heard all these different versions. So let's try and fix that. And one of the many mixes of This Charming Man was the Manchester mix. And it's only appropriate that we play it here now.
Punctured bicycle on a hillside desolate. When the leather runs smooth on the passenger seat, I would go out tonight, but I haven't got a stitch to wear. This man said it's gruesome that someone so handsome should care. A jumped up country boy about these things. He knows so much about these things. I would go out tonight, but I haven't got a stitch to wear. This man said it's gruesome that someone so handsome should care.
The Smiths, and the once impossible to find Manchester mix of This Charming Man from 1982. So the city gave us the Smiths and Joy Division and The Fall and New Order and all kinds of other fabulous bands. Manchester was also home to the fabled and doomed Factory Records, along with the infamous Hacienda nightclub. Hacienda. Tony Wilson, the owner of Factory Records, persuaded New Order, the most successful of all the Factory bands, to invest some of their profits into a nightclub that he envisioned would be the epicenter of, something. At the very least, it would be a place for great Manchester bands to play live, or a place for him and his buddies to drink. Besides, Manchester had a tradition of being the clubbing capital of England. Remember what I said about all those discos and DJs back in the 1960s? How could New Order lose on something like this? New Order and Blue Monday, one of the first songs to bridge what seemed to be an insurmountable gap between punk and rock and the various flavors of dance cultures. It became the biggest-selling 12-inch record in history. But let's go back to the Hacienda. It was opened in May 1982, and for the first 3.5 years, the place was a money pit. Despite the New Order Association, nobody came, and the debt got real big real fast. New Order was obligated to plow tons of hard-earned cash into this place. It was just absolutely awful. But then in 1986, there was a shift. It was a change in musical policy at the club that helped create a shift in musical culture in the city. We'll pick it up there in a second.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
Since the Hacienda Club couldn't attract crowds with live bands, and since Factory Records, and by extension New Order, were tired of losing tens of thousands of pounds every month on the place, something obviously had to change. Maybe they could make do with, just featuring a DJ and focusing on dance music Thursdays through Saturdays. I mean, hiring a guy with a box of records was certainly a whole lot cheaper than all the hassles associated with booking a band. This would prove to be a very, very important move. There was a culture clash going on in the city, and the Hacienda was one of its flashpoints. And if we're going to understand everything that came later during the Madchester explosion, we have to spend a little bit of time on the dance floor. The year was 1988, and the biggest thing was acid house and rave music. English DJs had imported Chicago house music and Detroit techno and New York rap and hip-hop and added a vital new ingredient, something called methyl N-deoxy N-methylamphetamine. It was a drug derived from the oil of the sassafras tree that made people all happy and huggy and ready to dance. Fans called it ecstasy. People had begun to drop tabs of E in about 1985, and some say that a guy named Bez, whom we will meet later on, introduced it to the club crowd. E became the stimulant, outgunning all other drugs, even beer. And over the next couple of years, E became so popular that it inevitably began to change the nature of the music. Huge and illegal outdoor parties started springing up in fields and warehouses and abandoned buildings, and the arrangement and the beats and the mixes and the lighting were designed to enhance the ecstasy experience. For the next couple of years, the dance floor and the DJ became the focus of an entirely new youth revolution. Huge chunks of fans gave up guitar-based groups and embraced the beats of the DJ. The man or woman behind the turntables was now the star, capable of whipping a crowd of thousands into a druggy, huggy frenzy. It was a mix of acid house and indie dance and Balearic dance and Chicago house and funk and hip-hop. It was an entirely new type of club culture, and this new house nation was amazingly and universally popular. Of all the established local acts, no one was more powerful than New Order. In 1988, they spent 12 weeks recording an album in Ibiza, the Spanish island renowned for its club culture and drug consumption. The result was a brilliant record called Technique, and like Blue Monday 6 years earlier, it bridged that gap between dance and rock. Fine Time from New Order's rave-influenced Technique album from 1988, and it played perfectly into the growing music culture of the time. All right, so did that mean that Manchester guitar rock was dead? No. It was waiting in the wings, quietly being inspired by the swirly sounds coming from the dance floor. And when it finally came out of hiding, it was embraced by the same people who said that they hated guitar rock. See, ecstasy made you love everybody. It was the beginning of a 2-year run of what became known as Madchester.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
If you were in a guitar band in Manchester in the middle and late 1980s, you ended up going to clubs and raves with your mates. Chances are you enjoyed yourself, and chances are that you picked up on the vibes and the sounds around you. Did those influences creep into what you were doing during band rehearsal? Absolutely. And to understand the whole Madchester era, you have to look at the 4 bands at the forefront of this thing that came out of the rave scene of the late 1980s. The first of which was the Happy Mondays. The Happy Mondays were essentially a bunch of vulgar, drunken, and occasionally violent thugs who used to hang out under one of the stairways at the Hacienda taking drugs. This alone was one of the reasons why Tony Wilson, the head of Factory Records, believed that he needed them for his label, so he gave him a deal. The Mondays were formed in 1985 by Sean Ryder, this hulking 6'5", hard-partying former postman, along with his brother Paul. Their first manager sold jeans from a stall at a weekly market. The Mondays were definitely a product of rave culture, but they didn't sound like anybody else. Sure, there were the rhythms and grooves of house music, but it was mixed in with 70s-style soul music that had been popular in that part of the country for years. And there was something vaguely psychedelic thrown in, too. And Sean Ryder didn't so much sing as he chanted and spoke. There were no real melodies to speak of, but that didn't seem to matter. And what exactly was Sean singing and chanting about, other than the fact that Sean was prepared to party 24 hours a day? No one knew, and you know what? Nobody seemed to care. It had a great beat. You could dance to it, and the ecstasy just made it all that much more colorful. The Happy Mondays were one of the first British rock bands to incorporate elements of hip-hop and rap into their music, not with samples and loops, but by borrowing grooves and licks. The rave kids loved it. And guess what? So did some of the guitar kids.
on water, and there's a grudge on you. You know you're not ought to have. You'll be running around the racetrack. You'll be running around the racetrack. Put that mother to bed, to bed. Put that mother to bed. With the 24-hour patter people, plastic face can't smell the white sun. Is that the way for you to conduct? Press the pause of the self-destruct. With the 24-hour patter people, plastic face can't smell the white sun. With the 24-hour patter people. Now, plenty of the white out. I need full-time. I don't need part-time. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 6, 5 all the time. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full-time. I don't need a part-time. I need 3, 6, 5. No days off. Twenty-four-hour party people, plastic face can't smile the white sun.
The Happy Mondays with an early song that personified the atmosphere in Manchester in the late 1980s. 24-hour party people. That's where the movie got its name from. And believe me, the Mondays did party 24 hours a day. They were a gang more than a band. One of their number, a guy named Bez, whose real name is Mark Berry, by the way, did nothing more than dance on stage. Okay, so sometimes he shook maracas, but for the most part, his job was to dance and make faces. Oh, and to help facilitate the supply of drugs. Legend has it that Bez was the guy who really helped introduce ecstasy into the whole rave scene. I don't know if that's true or not, but he certainly doesn't mind taking the credit. And then there was Rowena, who appeared on stage dressed as a dominatrix, complete with a whip. And this is surreal. This drunken, stoned, vulgar band was eventually managed by the father of Sean and Paul Ryder. It was all very, very mad. And hey, while we're on the subject, does anyone know where the term Madchester came from? Yes, it was a tag promoted by the UK music press, but who first came up with the word? If you go back to November 1989, you'll find a semi-obscure Happy Monday single called Madchester Rave On. And it was perfect. You know, with all the raves and clubs and music and drugs, the city had turned a little nuts, a little mad. The press pounced on that little bit of inspiration, and over the ensuing months, turned it into a household word. Well, wait a second here. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We're not there yet. At the same time the Happy Mondays were staggering all over the place, another group called the Stone Roses were starting to get their act together. They were formed in 1985, too, and like everyone else in the city, they were drawn to the raves and the clubs and the parties. And like the Mondays, they got into a psychedelic groove, but with more of a rock feel than a soulful one. Here's some early Roses. This is from 1985. It's a live radio performance of a single called Elephant Stone. The Stone Roses, several years before the whole Madchester thing hit. They were trying to record some songs like that with Joy Division producer Martin Hannett, but for a variety of reasons, those sessions and the subsequent record deals didn't work out. Want to hear more of these early attempts by the Roses? Here's a song that eventually became a massive, massive hit in the UK through 1989 and 1990. In fact, it was the opening track for that stunning debut album, but it was really first attempted as far back as 1985. This is the original abandoned version of I Wanna Be Adored. The Stone Roses from 1985 in an early version of I Wanna Be Adored. The Roses and the Mondays would go on to be one of the four main pillars of the Madchester movement, and if you hang on for just a second, we'll set things up for the second half of this show.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
By 1988, the rave and club scene was reaching a climax in Manchester. There was more waiting in the wings, too. The ravers and the clubbers had taught the guitar kids how to dance, and the guitar kids were about to show the clubbers how to rock. The Mondays and the Roses would lead the way, but they would be joined by groups with names like the Charlatans and the Inspiral Carpets, Northside, the Mock Turtles, and the New Fast Automatic Daffodils. Indie record labels began to have more influence. Factory, Silvertone, Cow, Mute. And the Madchester approach proved to be so popular that after a while, you didn't even need to be from Manchester to be categorized as a Manchester band. And then, of course, in the end, everything went horribly, horribly wrong, and it all blew up and exploded. Part 2 of Madchester next time with the ongoing history of new music. Technical productions by Rob Johnston. I'm Alan Krause.
You've been listening to The Ongoing History of New Music, a Deep Sky production.